Hi, this is Mark Galeotti, Senior Non-Resident Fellow at the Institute of International Relations Prague and 2018-2019 Jean Monnet Fellow at the European University Institute in Florence, with another one of my sporadic commentary on Russian politics and security affairs. And for the moment, clearly, it's about the current revelations about the GRU, Russian military intelligence, that seems to be everywhere. Most recently, with yesterday's revelations about hacking in the Netherlands and the United States and pretty much everywhere else. Now, the GRU, which technically nowadays we should call the GU, but everyone, even in Russia, still uses the old form GRU or GRU. At the moment, because it's exactly being identified in so many different cases, is facing certain claims that it just demonstrates just how massively incompetent they are. Well, there is certainly individual indications of a lack of tradecraft, a lack of competence and so forth, particularly these guys who were caught in the Netherlands with whatever it may well be that they also had on their laptops. But let's be honest, all intelligence agencies make mistakes. And in this case, one of the reasons why the GRU seems to be so much in the news, so much being caught out, is I think precisely because of just how active they are, but also because of their culture. Unlike the SVR, which is the sort of civilian foreign intelligence service, the GRU very much regards itself as a military war-fighting institution, and like soldiers generally, they see it as more important to accomplish the mission than to avoid risks. And therefore they're more likely to take chances. And the reason why we see them so much more at the moment is not because they're being that much less competent, but because they're being that much more active, more risk-taking. And so here is the problem. We're trying to assess the impact and in a way work out what the Kremlin's cost-benefit analysis is when we don't really know what the benefits are. We know the cases that are blown, we don't know what's successful. And we don't really know for certain whether or not the Kremlin is that unhappy with what's going on. There is a theory circulating, in fact, that the GRU has deliberately been allowing its traces to be seen around the world precisely to make people worried, to make people think, oh my God, there is nowhere that is safe from Russian intelligence. Now, I don't go that far. I think it's more that to a large extent, they don't care. They care about accomplishing the mission. They don't really care about whether or not people know it's Russia, or whether or not actually their individual agents get blown or not. And this is not so much about the GRU, but this is saying something about the Kremlin. I'm not at the moment seeing, and obviously this could change, because after all, there is only really one man who counts in Russia, and depends what he thinks from day to day. But at the moment, I'm not getting any sense that the Kremlin is truly, deeply bothered, unhappy, worried about all these revelations. And I think in part that reflects a sense in Putin and his inner circle's minds that in a way they have not much left to lose. Of course, there are certain red lines. They're not going to pick a war with NATO or anything like that. But nonetheless, there is a sense, I think, that, well, they are stuck in a geopolitical war with the West. They think it's the war that the West started, but that's a whole other matter. But the point is that they feel that in a way their reputational costs are already so great that what's a little bit more? And in this respect, it's interesting that there was a recent statement by Sergei Narishkin, head of the SVR, in which he more or less implied, well, of course this attempted assassination of the Skripal wasn't a Russian operation because it wasn't professional enough. And some regarded that as a dig at the GRU. I personally regard it more as the generic info noise that the Russians put out, just as we then found a colonel in the Spetsnaz Special Forces being portrayed on RT as a possibly gay sports nutrition salesman. It's not actually that these are digs at the GRU, these are just attempts to muddy the waters. Putin himself seems to be committed to this geopolitical campaign and not at the moment to be regarding the costs as outweighing the presumed benefits. So in this respect, we should not really be talking about the GRU. The GRU is merely an agent. The GRU, precisely because of its risk-taking, war-fighting culture, is perhaps much more visible, but it is at best the bloody leading edge of Kremlin foreign policy. So the question is really, how does this relate to a wider issue of what we can do about the Kremlin? Now, The press conferences yesterday were undoubtedly momentarily embarrassing for the Kremlin. But that's all they were. They were one particular irritating news cycle. The Kremlin clearly will say it had nothing to do with them, that this is actually all some kind of Western stratagem. Those people who are inclined to believe the Kremlin rather than their own governments will no doubt echo those talking points. But where do we go from here? Naming and shaming only applies if the other side is going to feel shame. The question is this: how do we alter the calculus? How do we change Kremlin policy? And this is not about looking at the GRU. We need to get away from this false symmetry, this false sense of, well, the GRU is visible and active, therefore we need to do something about the GRU. That is not what it's about. How can we change Kremlin views? And the point is, we can either take the route of much, much more draconian sanctions, full stop, which doesn't seem to be working that well so far, or we can be a bit more imaginative. And I think this is the point. What we need is not something instead of sanctions. What we need is something as well as sanctions. And I think this is one of the key points. We have not given Putin an alternative route. All we have basically said is submit. Stop doing the things we don't like. And if so, if you're a good boy, then maybe somewhere down the line we will start to relax our sanctions on you. And should we be surprised that a proud country's proud and legacy-seeking leader does not find that an appealing option? We need, without in any way providing benefits and rewards for bad behaviour, but to nevertheless clearly map out a route that is plausible and politically acceptable for Putin to get out of this geopolitical struggle, or we just accept that this is the way it is. We have to just look at containment, we have to just look at lasting out this current era of competition and basically wait for the post-Putin Kremlin and hope things are better. Which, in the grand scheme of things, may well be de facto what actually we have to end up doing, precisely because we don't have or are not willing to take a more positive approach. But I think the key point is this: do not expect the GRU, do not expect the Kremlin to stop its current adventurism. At the moment, the costs are not great enough, and frankly, I don't think we can or would want to escalate the costs to the point at which they'll be immediately crippling. We need to find some other way. And one might say, why should we do it? Why shouldn't the Kremlin do it? And fair enough. But the point is, we're in this situation. What do we do now? Thanks very much.